Lisa, thank you so much for coming. I know you're an interior designer, you have your own business, and we were looking for someone who had some experience talking about senior living because us baby boomers are progressing toward that option. But how did you get so interested in senior living?
Well, I was in interior design and I got into healthcare. And what I realized was I could only impact people for a couple days when they went to the hospital. And my family had a lot of longevity. So on my Italian side, my grandmother lived to like 98, 99. It's questionable. We never saw her birth certificate, And my grandfather was about 100. And so Sunday dinners, I was around a lot of older people. And then on the other side, my grandmother lived to 96. And so I really saw that they didn't have a lot of options. And I got into designing for an in-house company a long time ago, probably 25 years ago. And then 20 years ago was asked to start my own company. And so we've been doing this for the last 25 years all over really the world.
And you've personally had experience with your grandmother and some remodeling in the home. And when you have several generations who come together, that has to be, I would think, the biggest challenge in interior designing.
It is. There were things that were a challenge. So I had my mother and father move in with us 4.5 years ago. And they're in their late 70s, 80s. And then my grandmother was 92 at that point with Alzheimer's. So, and I had 2 kids in high school and my husband. So that was a challenge. But the biggest point that was a challenge that I didn't realize, making it easy for my grandma wasn't really that difficult. It was storage. Like, where do you put the Christmas decorations? Whose silverware do you get to use? All those kinds of little things, especially having 4 women in one household. Those kinds of things were a little more difficult than I thought on the interior design side. The interior design side helped everybody.
Well, that's good. And you've already planned your household or where you're going to live, and that's what I think sometimes hard for all of us to know when we, if it's a single person or as a couple, when's it time to start addressing these issues?
Now. So it's a typically American thing to wait till there's a crisis. And not to pre-plan and not to be proactive. That's how our healthcare system is. That's how we act about our weight. I look at, I can't fit into my pants today. It's hard to button my, pants, and so I better go on a diet versus how am I actively eating right and doing those kinds of things. So now is the time. You don't want to wait until you're in a crisis and you have to make a decision that you wouldn't necessarily have had to make. And so that's why I'm here, is to talk about those things. There's so many choices out there.
Well, and I hadn't thought about several of the ones you mentioned, so let's just quickly go through those. Cruising, that's the one that really caught my attention. I like cruising, but I hadn't thought about living on a cruise ship.
Well, it's interesting. When you start to do the numbers, and you look at how you want to spend your retirement dollars, you can, assisted living, which is, going into a senior living private pay resort, gorgeous place, which is what my firm does, that'll cost you probably on the low end $3,400 a month, up to $20,000 a month, and this is out of pocket. So when you're thinking about $50,000 a year to $200,000 a year, that's a lot of money, right? Well, when you think about what a hotel costs or a cruise ship costs, it opens up the doors, right?
It does.
You've got a doctor on staff, 24/7. The food is fantastic. It's all included. You've got housekeeping.
Your entertainment's provided.
Your entertainment's provided. You've got people getting on and off and new people. You're not stuck with the same old people the whole time, right? And you get to travel and see the world. So it's a fantastic option.
I think that's great. Another one you talk about is you have a permanent boys or girls night out.
Right. So,
slumber parties all the time.
So, it's a lot like Betty White and the Golden Girls. So, actually, I've got a bunch of girlfriends who are a little bit younger than baby boomers, but I could actually see if we end up aging solo, which 65% of boomers are aging solo. So they're not able to go with their kids, or they no longer have a husband or a wife. What do? Well, if you guys like to golf, you might get a house together. And it might be on the golf course. And it's a lot more affordable that way. You come home, you can travel, especially if you have pets. Somebody else can watch them. So it's a perfect fit.
And be able to share the cooking, share the cleaning, and all of those
even get a maid,
aspects.
those kinds of things, but cost share all of that.
Cost share. What about road tripping, taking trips?
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I probably am very interested in that. You can get a kind of the RVs, the mini RVs or pull-on campers now, very cost effective, versus the old ones where you had to have several $100,000 and then you had to do all kinds of stuff. Now you can pull in to even stay at hotels if you don't want to stay in the camp, but this gives you longer drive options and that kind of stuff. And now you can pay someone to do all the things like the toilets and all that kind of stuff that I wouldn't want to do, and the maintenance all around the country. And you can see it all at your own pace and not really plan.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. My grandparents actually, in their 50s, this was back in the day, retired and took a year and road tripped.
Oh.
They went all through the United States and then up through Canada and Alaska.
That's great.
Yeah.
While they were both still able-bodied
Exactly right.
and interested in
exactly
all that.
right.
That would
And
be
I
good.
and I always remember that, and I think, oh my gosh, how glorious.
It
And
would be.
they'd bring us back trinkets and tell us about how they went to the mountains and Mount Rushmore and all these places that you want to see, but you not necessarily have time to.
What about house swapping?
That's a great one. So if anyone's heard of Airbnb, it's a little like that, where you rent somebody else's house, but you actually swap houses. So you might be going to New York City and someone might want to come to Dallas, Texas, and that might be where you live. And you can actually swap your houses, or you could do it with someone in Italy or France. There's a whole network. And you get rated, so you don't have to worry about somebody coming in and destroying your house. You can say no pets allowed, no children, whatever your desire is, but then there's no cost. So imagine that. You could go to Rome or Paris or Egypt and house swap, and someone over there might want to come here.
That's great. And the Airbnb would be the listing that we would find.
Yeah, there's in my new book, Boom, coming out, I have all the listings of all the house swap.
Good. I kind of like that one too.
Yeah.
And then we end with moving to paradise.
So a lot of people are becoming expatriates. They're going to Panama, they're going to Puerto Rico. Well, Puerto Rico is still a little bit U.S., but they're going to South America. They might go to France or Estonia. Those kinds of places where you can live so much less expensive. And the care you can get a full staff and live like a queen. And a lot of it is, you can always fly back to the U.S. for health care if you wish, but some of these places have some of the top doctors in the world to take care of you, and some of them even take U.S. dollars.
I see. Well, I think that was the most interesting, talking about how we determine, instead of waiting and having someone say, you have to be put into the home,
right,
or you have to go into assisted living. If we plan ahead and far enough ahead, and then realize all the options that are available, it's an exciting time.
It is, and you can even live with your own family. Like my mom and dad and grandmother lived with us. It was such a benefit for my kids and us, and I travel a lot. And, how do you make sure somebody gets their homework done? Or pick them up from cheerleading? Or those kinds of things. And my parents said, we love it because we get energy of the kids coming in and we stay relevant and hip.
I think
my
that's
mom's
great.
even on Instagram and Snapchat and everything.
Well, there's so much available, and I think that's the key to it is keep all ages involved. This was the first book you wrote. It's called Hive, and it's called The Simple Guide to Multi-Generational Living.
That is.
That does go through those 1, 2, 3 generations that you had there.
It is. So it's a combination book. It's a little bit of a chicken soup kind of thing where I'm telling funny stories. I live with my parents, so when there's a funny story, you can either cry about it or you can laugh about it. And so we laugh
It's
a
your
lot,
choice.
and we have a lot of fun. So we talk about that in it. We talk about design, like what do you have to do to really change your house, and then we talk about the technology.
Well, and having someone like you, you just provided so much of the information that your parents, probably especially, would have had to have gone outside and looked for. So your books, your information really has helped all of us, and I appreciate you being here today.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.